Welcome to the Teachers on Fire podcast, where I profile agents of growth and transformation in education today. Each guest shares their highs, their lows, their passions, their goals, and the resources that are shaping their thinking and inspiring their practice. For show notes and links from each episode, visit teachersonfire.net. You can also follow the show at Teachers on Fire on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And of course, please subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm your host, Tim Cavey. Let's meet today's guest. Today, I'm speaking with Tiffany Ott. Tiffany is a high school math teacher, a director of curriculum development with the Teach Better team, and the founder of MasteryChat. She's also a co-author of the recently published Teach Better, and I know she'll have a big role to play in the upcoming Teach Better conference. You can follow Tiffany on Twitter at TechieTeachOtt and on her blog at teachbetter.com. Tiffany, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Are you ready to talk education?
I am ready. I love talking education, Tim.
All right. Well, that's what I like to hear. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit more about your current context in education? What does that look like?
So right now I live and work in Northeast Ohio. I am actually part-time faculty at Western Reserve Academy. That's like one of my jobs. I have multiple jobs, so I do that part-time. And part-time I work with the Teach Better team. But I always joke because when you have part-time jobs in education, they're really two full-time jobs. So I'm very, very busy. At Western Reserve, I teach high school math, and I also work in the academic center, which is kind of the school's resource center for students with learning differences or kids who really just need help getting their life together, organized, managing all of the chaos that is living and attending a boarding school. So Western Reserve is a boarding school, which is interesting. This is my second year there, and I've been in public education for 10 years. The first 10 years of my career was public education. And so going into boarding school life was a fascinating adventure. Still learning a lot, but it's interesting. We've got kids from all over the world. We have kids from all different walks of life. You know, Tim, there's this misconception that boarding schools are full of really, really rich kids. And I have been really joyful to learn that that's not the case at all. A lot of my kids come from areas of struggle, right? They come from low income and they get financial aid and they come to this school, and we get to work with so many interesting kids. I absolutely love living and working in a boarding school because I get to be so much more a part of my kids' lives. And it's been a really interesting shift in my career. So that's fun. A shift from middle school teaching and elementary teaching and all the other teaching I did in the first 10 years. And now I get to go on this other new adventure, which I just love learning. So it's fun to be in a new area.
Now, you might be my very first guest who teaches at a boarding school. So I find that really interesting. Do you actually live on campus?
So I don't yet. I'm fortunate because the school's only about 10 minutes from my house. I actually grew up, my best friend attended the school. And when I was growing up, I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I could attend there too, because she really, really developed these very close connections with her teachers. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want that. I want that kind of really challenging environment. So I live 10 minutes from there. The hope is that I will live on campus in the next few years because I like being 100% all in. You know, in the first 10 years of my career, you know, the school day ends at 3:15 and you might coach or you might, you know, go to some evening activities to support your kids. But in this boarding school environment, it's like you're on 24/7, which is incredibly difficult, but so rewarding. You know, teachers often think of their students as their own children. And it's more when I'm here at this boarding school. It's like I have, 400 kids and I get to see them, eat dinner with them, talk to them about life and in ways that I just never could before. Tim, it is fascinating being in this environment.
What a remarkable experience. Well, maybe there will be a book coming out just about that alone, Tiffany, about the boarding school, the boarding school life. And like you say, yeah, I can definitely imagine that those students sure become like children. I mean, the connections must go so deep.
Yeah.
But we're going to jump into story time, Tiffany. So if you don't mind, share with us about a low moment or an experience of adversity that you faced somewhere in your teaching or education career and describe how you overcame it.
Yeah. So I love this question. I love anytime educators talk about and are open about, what their greatest struggle was, because I think it's so powerful when we can connect over shared experiences. And all of us in education have had moments when it's like, oh my gosh, everything's falling apart, like our rock bottom. We talk about that in our book, Tim, how sharing our rock bottom moments and being vulnerable is so powerful. So here is one of my lowest lows in education. So my first 3 years in the career, I was teaching in North Carolina. I was a middle school teacher, and my husband and I were down there, and we were broke, extremely broke, to put it simply. And we found ourselves pregnant with my daughter Kaya, and had to make a decision to stay in North Carolina and continue to be extremely broke, or move back to Ohio. And we are those millennials who moved back into my parents' basement. Um, yeah, that was fun. And we come back to Ohio, and I came back without a teaching job. I had my daughter in October, and it was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I need to get a job. So I was fortunate enough to find a long-term sub position at a school, and it had a lot of potential to become a full-time position. The teacher had left mid-year and wasn't planning on coming back. So here I was, like, at this moment, which could have been so, so good for my family. And it's going really, really well for a couple months. And then I taught gifted ed. I taught gifted sixth graders in an enrichment, like, pullout program. And I had found these really cool psychology for kids books and looking at how the brain works. And I was like, yes, that's the next unit I'm going to do. So we dive into it, and we do some really fascinating learning experiences. And we really look at some meaty issues of mental health and how that impacts our lives. And I was like, yes, this is great. My middle school kids really need to hear this message. But now here comes the struggle. So what I didn't consider was how that learning experience would be perceived by stakeholders in the kids' education, namely their parents. So while I stand behind the importance and the power of the unit that I did, my biggest failing was the fact that I didn't communicate with those stakeholders in a way that set it up to be a positive experience. So I had some parents, and I'm sure many teachers can relate to this. I had some parents who weren't too happy with the content that we were talking about in class. And they complained quite loudly to administration. And it turned out that I didn't get to turn that long-term sub position into a full-time position. And as I'm sure you can imagine, that was absolutely crushing.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, I was just angry at the parents, angry at administration, and so frustrated that they didn't see the positive aspect of talking about mental health with middle school kids, because that's something I think is really important for us to do, and talking about how the mind works. And so I just kind of raged out, and I was bitter about it. Eventually, I found a full-time job and, kind of moved on with my career. And it took me a little while, but a couple years down the road, I realized that the problem and the failing wasn't in the people around me. It wasn't in my parents, not my parents, my students' parents. It wasn't in the administration. I took responsibility myself for the fact that I failed to communicate, and I failed to, get people bought into what I was trying to do with kids. And that was really eye-opening for me. And it has really formed a lot of how I have faced my career in the last 5 years since that happened. Because what I have realized is I can be a great teacher to kids, and I can have incredible relationship with kids, and I can craft learning experiences that are really powerful for them. But my students don't just exist in my classroom. They exist in a larger world. They exist in a world with other teachers, with with their parents, and kind of opening up my perspective in that way and seeing kind of the interconnected world that my kids live in has just really changed how I interact with stakeholders in my students' lives. And it has been so positive, Tim. It has just made all the things that I'm trying to do now so much more effective. And, in retrospect, I'm like, what was I thinking not to actually engage these stakeholders? But, hindsight is 2020, right? But it's just really taught me to be more thoughtful in terms of crafting a learning experience for all people involved in my kids' lives, not just for my students themselves.
Well, it really is a learning community that we work in, right? It's not just the students, as you say, it's also the parents. And what a world of difference it can make to either have your parents on your side, fully supportive, or working against you and sort of doubting your process and what you are all about. And what a story. Thank you for sharing it, Tiffany. I think that's so important. And, this year, my admins are requiring us to make sure we put out a weekly newsletter. And in the past, that's always sort of been encouraged, but never required. So part of me sort of groans at that. But you know what? There is such positivity in developing that relationship with parents and just making sure that you have that buy-in and support and they understand what you are trying to achieve. It just makes a world of difference.
And Tim, you brought up newsletters, so I have to say this, okay? Because I have this thing about newsletters, and I tell everybody I can about this. So I want to challenge you and the other teachers at your school to record a video newsletter. So I have this issue with sending parents like a wall of text, right? Or a newsletter with so many words. Parents, students, the world right now is like desperate for connection, right? We live in this incredibly connected world that can feel very lonely at times. And so hop on your computer and record a video of you telling your parents the things you would have told them in a newsletter and email that to them. And I have found that when I do that, or when people I work with have done that, it really helps your parents get to know who you are as a teacher, which helps them buy into what you're trying to do. So that's just my little plug about video newsletters. So I want you to try that, Tim, and let me know how that goes.
Okay, well, I appreciate the challenge, Tiffany. I'll give it a shot. You can hold me accountable on that.
Done.
Tiffany, the Teach Better team recently published Teach Better, a book that really summarizes your philosophies, strategies, and journeys in education. So tell us more about the heart and mission of this book. Why did you write it, and what can educators expect to get out of it?
I'm so excited, Tim, that this book is out there for the world to see. And anytime I'm describing this book to somebody, I always describe it as part memoir, part inspiration, and part real teaching strategies you can put in place immediately. The book is kind of this interwoven series of stories from all four of us on the Teach Better team, where we share our struggles, our rock bottoms, our challenges, and how we overcame them. And then paired with, now you teacher, go try and do this thing right here. And we're going to walk you through what you can do, specific things you can put in place today or tomorrow. And really the mission of the book and the whole purpose behind it, we have this philosophy that each one of us on the team has come to kind of separately through our own challenges in our educational careers, of constantly trying to just pursue better. And this philosophy of being better today than we were yesterday and being better tomorrow than we were today. And it's not about being perfect. It's not about doing everything right, but it is about constantly being reflective, looking in the mirror and saying, what's one thing I can do now that's going to be better? So this perpetual moving forward. And in the book, it's important to us that we shared our own vulnerability and our own challenges and embracing that mindset. And we want to spread the word, and we want to share that with as many teachers as we can, because we can have, and when you're on social media, you can have lots of conversations with educators. You can talk to people, in your own school down the hallway. And this philosophy is so important to us to share with as many people as we can, that we wrote a book about it, because we just want people to have the tools in their hands, and we want them to believe that they themselves can be better, that they can teach better. So it's kind of a challenge with inspiration pulled into it. I'm really excited with how the book came out. It is, my heart and soul is in this book, and I just hope people can find something that helps inspire them and push them forward.
Well, I'll just tell listeners right now, right from the very first pages, you'll be engaged when you hear Chad's story of sending a kid out of his classroom, I think it was, and you're just on the edge of your seat from the very first pages. Can you talk briefly about your contributions in the book, Tiffany? Did you have a favorite part or a section that really resonated most powerfully for you?
Oh, everybody always asks that question, and it's so hard because I love so many parts of it. So I honestly, the very first sentence in the book is my favorite sentence in the book, because it is so in your face.
Yeah.
And so I hope it's okay that I say this on air, if you will. The first sentence of the book, for everybody who hasn't read it yet, is, get the hell out of my classroom.
Right.
And that was so important to me. I fought for that to be the first sentence in the book, because that right there is the raw vulnerability that we share in this book. Like, Chad yelled that in front of his classroom of students. And that was a moment like, oh God, what have I done? Right? Like,
Yeah.
wow, this is a moment that I need to take and change what I'm doing. So I love that first sentence. And then also, towards the end of the book, we have the expect better chapter and complain better chapter. And I love expect better so much because I 100% believe that the expectations we have of ourselves and of our students and of the education community need to be very high. They need to be firmly stuck to and believed in, because when you expect great things from people, they do great things, Tim. And it sounds so trite and so oversaid, but it is so true. I've seen kids blossom because I expected that they would, and it's just I love that entire chapter, and it gives you real strategies you can use right away. And then I love complain better. I'm kind of describing the whole book. Sorry, Tim, because I love the whole book. Complain better is my favorite way to end the book. It's so good because education is full of complaining. There is so much to complain about, Tim. It is so hard to be a teacher. It is so hard to be in education. And we all have gotten caught up in complaining mode, right? You talked about the newsletter that your admin is making everybody do, right? The weekly newsletter. It is so easy to complain about that. It is so easy to groan about it, right? But kind of the heart of that chapter in the book really boils down to something my mother always taught me growing up. She said, there's things in life that are not fun, are not fair, are not right, might not be good. You can either choose to do something about it and change it, or you can choose to accept it and move forward. The only thing you can't do is complain. So complaining is useless to us, but we all have that desire to complain sometimes. So what are you going to do about it? How are you going to complain better? What are you going to do to actually move forward? So I love the whole thing.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate that take. And yes, I do love just the overall perspective that comes across. It's a growth mindset perspective of everyone's on a journey, everyone's looking to improve, everyone's looking to grow. We're human beings. We love to label people as either good teachers or bad teachers, but the reality is we're all on a journey, right? We're all moving forward. And that's what comes across in this very human, very practical, very inspiring book. So I'm very excited to be a very small part of the promotion of the book. And we'll talk more about the conference here in a moment as well. So a lot of exciting things happening at Teach Better. But I also want to talk about something else you're involved with, Tiffany. While I have you here, I do want to talk about the MasteryChat on Twitter. And I can remember for a long time, I'd like to say even as far back as a year ago, sort of seeing this Tiffany Ott come on with her live stream after the chat, full of energy and reflection. So talk about the MasteryChat for educators who maybe aren't connected with it, aren't sure what's going on there. What are some of your favorite things about these professional conversations?
Yeah, so MasteryChat is our Twitter chat every Thursday at 8 Eastern, and we gather every week and talk about everything under the sun when it comes to education. Every week we have a different guest moderator, and we have a series of 7 questions, and we just dive in and discuss. And, funny story, MasteryChat's my baby, right? Like, I love MasteryChat. A couple years ago, I wasn't really into Twitter, and I started getting into Twitter as an educator by joining some Twitter chats. And I was like, this is really cool. I'm learning so much. And so I brought it to the team and I said, we really need to have a Twitter chat. And I'll never forget the very first Mastery Chat. We were sitting in a hotel in Atlanta, Georgia. And we had been gathering, like we were at a conference all day and promoting this Mastery Chat all day long and trying to get as many people as we could to join us. And we're sitting in this hotel, and the very first Mastery Chat, I think, had 6 people, and 4
Yeah.
of them were us, which is just really funny considering now there's over 100 people in Mastery Chat every week. So it's
Wow.
really fun for me to see that community grow. And what I love most about that community, sometimes when you're in the social media world or the digital PLN world, sometimes there's a bit of an echo chamber. You have a lot of people saying the same thing and,
Right.
retweeting common philosophies. And there's a place for that. There's a place to have that kind of inspiration and validation. And I think that's a very valuable thing that we have in social media right now. But at the same time, you need to be able to challenge each other. And that's something that I always encourage in our Mastery Chat. I actively seek out people who might disagree with the herd, if you will, and I say, tell me more about it. Let's talk about it. Let's debate this. In fact, when I'm coaching people on creating questions for Mastery Chat, I always offer suggestions for how to tweak it and really push us. What kind of questions are going to get answers that don't all sound the same? And so that's something that is really important to me in that community, because I don't want to just be another Twitter chat where everybody says the same thing. I want to be a Twitter chat where we actually learn. And so I think Mastery Chat has done that fairly well. And it's something that I really enjoy about that community.
That's awesome. Tiffany, as you look across your PLN and your own professional practice right now, what else is setting you on fire about education today? Do you have another pet topic or obsession right now that you'd like to share about?
Education is so cool, Tim. I mean, we are just in this moment in the world, in society, in education, where things are changing so fast. We have, I mean, I think about when I was in school and we had a computer lab with a handful of computers and we played Oregon Trail, which was great, right? Now, at our fingertips, we have access to so much knowledge, so much experience. We can innovate with people across the world with the click of a button. And that potential is so huge. And I think sometimes education is a little slow to move on things that could be innovative and incredible. And the connection that we have now in our world lets us move a little bit faster. And I just see the world changing so quickly around us. And I feel like it gives us this incredible opportunity to say, everything's changing in the world right now, everything. So let's take education and kind of reshape it, recraft it, remold it into something that's actually going to be right for kids. So we have this momentum going. Let's not let the momentum fizzle. Let's not let it kind of revert back to the average, right? Let's take this as the fire that can push us forward. And I think that I'm really excited to see what education does in the next 10 years. Really excited, because I think 10 years from now, it will be impossible for education to look the same. And that's terrifying to some people, but it's so exciting to me, because if it can't look the same because the world is different, then we right now, the people who are in education right now, have the power to change it into what it could be. So I am so excited to be teaching at this moment in history, because it is really a moment in history right now where we are in education. And I think that's very exciting.
Wow, I'm applauding over here, and I think you're so right. The days of the teacher that, quote, has made it and has their stuff together, those days are over, right? Because technology and the world and even education philosophy is moving forward at such a rapid rate. Tiffany, every school, it seems, asks its educators, its teachers, to set professional goals each year. I don't know if the same can be said of your school, but how are you looking to grow professionally and improve your practice through this school year? Do you have a specific professional goal or a project that you're currently working on?
Yeah. So, and yes, my school also asks us to write professional goals. I actually want to mention, I really love the way my school does it, because it's not just fill out this paper and, tell us what your goals are. It's really embedded into everything we do at our school. And I think that's really powerful. I think that, first of all, I want to talk about the fact that one of my personal professional goals is to work very hard to build connections with the colleagues at my school. This is my second year in the school and my second year ever teaching high school. So I am trained in middle school, which has a very team approach to teaching, which I love. And moving into high school, it is a completely different beast. There's a lot more isolation, I feel, for teachers in a lot of high schools.
Sure.
And, we have our math department and our science department. And I think the real incredible power in education is when we come together, when we help students see this beautiful interconnected web of content that just is right there. And so before I can really start building that at the school I'm in, I have to know the people I'm working with. So I am having constant conversations. I'm chit-chatting with people about nothing, so that someday we can have a conversation about something, right? So that's kind of like, this is a multi-year goal for me, and really finding every opportunity I can to just talk to and be open with my colleagues. And that's another thing that I didn't learn early in my career. I used to have this philosophy of, well, if they don't understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, that's their fault, which is so naive. So naive. And I've just learned so much that if you put yourself out there to help people, this sounds so silly saying it because this is such a duh thing, right? But if you put yourself out there and just offer your help, you will just pull people into your world and your bubble, and then you can have the hard conversations. So I'm a techie person, so I'm helping people figure out the new learner management system, and I'm showing them this really cool new tech tool I found and helping them figure out how to use it, and just helping them with any problem that they have so that I can build those connections. And then I can be like, hey guys, here's an idea, and it will actually be heard. So that's kind of a big chunk of what I'm focusing on this year professionally in my teaching world. I also, we have a great community around where I live, and Ray Hughart talks all the time about the importance of bringing community and bringing relevance into what we're learning and what we're teaching our kids. And I think as a math teacher, sometimes kids see math as this thing that doesn't matter in their life. And so another thing I'm working on is how to bring our community partners, our community businesses, our community environment into our students' world through the lens of the content that I teach. And so that's something that's also a work in progress for me.
I happened to notice just yesterday, George Couros tweeted out basically that exact question of how are teachers connecting math principles with the real world? That's something we're always looking to do, right? As we teach math, is just make it more authentic, more relevant.
Yeah.
Outside of education, what's another area of learning for you? What is it that ignites your passions when you leave that boarding school and brings you alive as a human being?
I love this question. And it's funny. We so frequently neglect our personal lives as educators because we love so much what we do. And when education is your passion, it bleeds over into every area of your life, right? But I do have a couple other things non-education related that I love. And I love to cook. I love to bake. And I love to cook and bake with my kids. My middle daughter, Kaya, is obsessed with cooking. We watch the Great British Baking Show. We watch cooking shows, and she's constantly inventing new recipes. So I love doing that with her. And I just love hosting a good meal and feeding people. I don't know why, but I love that. And then when I was in high school, I took pretty much every art class that they offered. I love art, and I love three-dimensional art. I love sculpting with clay. I love working with yarn, crocheting. And I'm actually going to kind of bleed over into my teaching world a little bit because I get to teach this really cool enrichment class this spring called Needles and Numbers that I came up with. And we are going to crochet like physical representations of hyperbolic planes. It's so cool. So I get to kind of bring my own personal passions into my teaching world too. So that's really fun.
And that's really the point, right? Is that our personal passions and pursuits tend to bleed into the classroom, and our learners benefit from that. So that is very, very cool. Tiffany, you are such a busy person. You're so productive, and yet you just ooze this positive energy. So share with us your secret. Do you have a personal habit or a productivity hack that contributes to your success and allows you to get it all done?
All the credit for that is on my support network, specifically my husband. I rely very heavily on him, not necessarily to, get me organized or make me productive, but to really kind of see where I'm at mentally. I talked about how important mental health is for our kids to understand and to be supported in. And I'm very fortunate to have a husband who reads me like a book, who can see when all of my tasks that I have to do are getting overwhelming. And he looks me in the eyes and he says, all right, let's sit down. Let's figure this out because I can see that you're starting to lose it. So he'll make to-do lists with me. He'll help me organize what I'm working on and prioritize things. And sometimes he'll even, send me into the room to take a nap because he knows that that's what I need. So really my productivity trick is to get people around me who support me, right? And who are willing to say to me, Tiffany, you got to stop now for a quick minute, because I'm kind of a workaholic and I love what I do so much. It's very difficult for me to pull myself away. I'll spend hours like caught up designing this really cool new lesson or something, and having him be able to say, whoa, you got to kind of take care of yourself
Right.
so that you can continue to do these things. That's really my biggest support, my biggest trick for being able to do what I do.
That is awesome. Well, credit to him. And, I completely agree. And I think part of that too is just having the grace, right? For when you are in the zone, when you are in the flow, and maybe you have a deadline and he's just not seeing a lot of you. And it's during those times that we need a lot of grace for each other. So, sounds like an awesome person to have in your corner, which is really special. Just before we continue, I do want to share an important message from, you guessed it, the Teach Better team. Are you looking to reach more students, innovate your instruction, and teach better? Then join the Teach Better team on November 8th and 9th in Northeast Ohio for the first ever Teach Better conference. Join dynamic educators such as Dave Burgess, Taltel Thompson, Adam Welcome, and more. Register now at teachbetterconference.com. And when you do, be sure to use discount code FIRE50 to save $50 on either of the 2-day registration options. Are you ready to be better? Well, I have to ask you, Tiffany, what are your thoughts on the conference and what are you looking forward to there? I'm sure there's a lot you could say, but is there something in particular that stands out right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I am so excited for this conference. It's weeks away and we're in the final planning push, all kind of realizing how much we have to do in the next 3 weeks, but we're really excited. I think one of the things I'm most looking forward to this conference, besides meeting so many of my fabulous PLN in person, which is really exciting, but we also have crafted some experiences that I think are unlike what you frequently see in education conferences. I've been to a lot of them. But we have some experiences that we're building at the start and end of each of the 2 days that are really going to help everyone who's coming be very reflective and be very all in the experience. It's really easy to go to a conference and just kind of go to sessions and go through the motions and pull something out of it. And yeah, that's great. I'll use that in my classroom. But we're designing this conference to be a full experience. We want to capture your emotions and your mind and your heart. I'm actually hoping to make some people cry so that we can kind of get this cathartic, collaborative, united feeling from this conference, because it's not just about learning new techniques, which we will. We've got so many great presenters, but it's about coming together as a community and finding the ways we can push ourselves to be better every day. So that's really the part of the conference I'm looking most forward to.
Well, you talked earlier, Tiffany, about that importance of building community and relationships, and I just know that's going to be a huge theme at the Teach Better conference. I'm so sad that I won't be able to be a part of it, but I hope to follow online, and I'm sure there will be a lot of activity on Twitter in real time, so that'll be fun. One of the guests, actually, one of your speakers that I'm most excited about is CJ Reynolds, who's kind of quiet on Twitter, but his space, if you're familiar with him, is the vlogging space. And
Yeah.
I've been watching his videos for quite some time. And so when I heard he's going to be at the Teach Better conference, I thought, no way, this just got a little more painful that I'm not going to be there.
Yeah, such a bummer. We have incredible people coming. I'm so excited to meet them all.
All right. Well, Tiffany, it is time for your quick picks. And here we want to know the education voices and resources that are shaping your practice and inspiring your thinking today. So starting at Twitter, where you have a very large following, and so this question will be hard. Tell us about someone we should follow there and share why they've been inspiring you lately.
That is so hard because there's so many incredible people. So I think I'm going to have to pick Danny Steele at Steele Thoughts. That man just puts out these words of wisdom, words of inspiration that, sometimes I go to Twitter as my pick me up. I need a little boost to get me through the day. And I know that if I go to his account, I'm going to find something that resonates with me and makes me feel like, okay, I'm on the right path. Let's go. So he's kind of my daily dose of, let's do this. I love him. He's great.
Point us to an Edtech tool that you currently love using somewhere in your professional practice or right there in your classroom.
I just discovered Gimkit this summer, and it is such an awesome tech tool. I don't know how I missed out on it before. It's like Kahoot, but times 100 and with gambling, I guess you could say. It's such a cool tech tool. You got to check it out. The kids love it.
Well, thank you for putting that back on my radar. I told Mr. Scott Nunes, that I would give it a try this year, and I haven't yet. So, Gimkit,
So
all
good.
right. And recommend a book besides Teach Better. Obviously, that's the one teachers should be out there buying right now. But is there another one that you've been reading lately, or perhaps one of your all-time faves that you could recommend?
So, one of my favorite kind of education, but not just education books that I've read is Lies My Teacher Told Me. And it came out about a little over 10 years ago. And it's really looking at history and how we don't always paint an accurate picture of what history is. And we omit things that our students really need to know. So, as I was reading that book, I just learned so much that directly conflicted with what I was taught in school. And so it was a very eye opening experience for me to read that book and made me rethink how we present information to our students and in terms of presenting an unbiased view of the world so that they can go forward with an actual understanding of what the world is instead of this, kind of sugar coated or glazed overview of the world we live in. I love that book.
Awesome. And next, Tiffany, I hope you're a podcast listener. If you are, tell us about a podcast that you enjoy that we need to have in our deck.
So I have to say Teach Better Talk. I know it's the podcast that my team puts out with Ray and Jeff, but even though I get to talk to Ray and Jeff all the time as a part of the work I do with Teach Better, I really enjoy their back and forth banter on Teach Better Talk. So I just listen to the episodes that my team puts out because I really enjoy laughing at them because they are hilarious. And we also get really great tidbits and inspiration from that podcast. So that one's a lot of fun to listen to.
It really is. Next, you talked about video earlier, so I know you're interested in the YouTube space. Tell us about a YouTube channel that you enjoy and explain why.
So I love Michael Matera. Michael Matera wrote Explore Like a Pirate, and he's really, I would call him a gamification guru. That guy has such an incredible mind. Love talking with him. And his YouTube channel is really relatable. He's a really friendly guy, and that comes through in his videos. And he offers so many really helpful tips for making gamification work in your classroom. I really love that guy, and I could just watch his videos all the time because he's so nice to talk to and so nice to listen to. He's a really, really good guy. So smart too. Michael Matera is really smart.
Very interesting guy, and I think his channel is called Well Played. I know his podcast is for sure, so take a look for that. The last question, Tiffany, we're here at the end already. Just for fun, what are you watching on Netflix right now?
I'm obsessed with The Great British Baking Show. I love that show so much. We've been watching it with my daughter and my mom, actually, who's in town for a while, and that's a lot of fun. I love the British accents, and it's hilarious.
Well, we talked briefly about pies and baking earlier, and if you haven't seen Tiffany's pies on Twitter, you need to take a look. They've gotten a ton of play, and they really are phenomenal. They're beautiful looking pies. So you're not fooling around in the kitchen when it comes to pie baking.
They were very tasty.
Tiffany, what are the best ways for the listeners to follow you and connect with what you're putting out there these days on education?
So Twitter's really the platform that I'm on the most. So your go-to is going to be Twitter at Tiffany Ott. You should also follow at Teach Better Team because I kind of post on both of those. I'm in both of those worlds. But if you want to directly connect with me, it's Tiffany Ott. And then our website is teachbetter.com, and you can find loads of resources on there. I'm also on Instagram, Tiffany Ott 1, although I admit I'm not spectacular at regularly posting there, so go to Twitter. And then Facebook, we have actually a page and a group. And the Facebook group, I need to take a minute and just talk about how awesome that Facebook group is. It's, if you just search Teach Better Team and then find the group, there are a few thousand educators on there right now, and it is such an engaged community with so many incredible ideas being shared and problem solving happening, and that's a really, really cool community to be on.
Well, that is phenomenal. I've been connected with so much of Teach Better, and I can personally say I thoroughly enjoy everything you guys put out. So love the team, love what you're all about. If you haven't connected yet with the Teach Better team and Teach Better Talk, make sure you do that. But Tiffany, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time with the podcast today. This has been super fun. You are so positive and you bring so many awesome insights. I'm inspired, and I know my listeners will be as well. So take care, and let's talk again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks for joining me today here on the Teachers on Fire podcast. For show notes and links from this episode, visit teachersonfire.net. You can also follow the show at Teachers on Fire on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And again, please do subscribe to the show wherever you happen to be listening right now. Before we sign off today, I'd like to share highlights from around the Teachers on Fire community this week. First up, Twitter, where On Education Podcast at On Education Pod tweeted, quote, "Friends, a new episode of On Education Podcast is out now. This week we had an awesome chat with at Mr. Cavey, Tim Cavey, the host of at Teachers on Fire, about edu-podcasting and content creation. Subscribe where awesome podcasts are found," end quote. Well, thank you, Mike and Glenn, for having me on the show. On Education has been a podcast that I've been listening to for well over a year. It's been an inspiration for my own show, and I really appreciate the work those guys are doing. So make sure you tune in to my conversation with them. That's On Education Podcast. Next, Jacob Chastain at Jacob Chastain _ tweeted, quote, "What an honor to have Teach Me Teacher mentioned as one of the top podcasts for educators on the at Twinkle Resources blog. I see you at Teachers on Fire. Glad to see you on there too." Thank you so much, Jacob, for that shout out and recognition. Really appreciate it. And thank you to Twinkle Resources, who selected Teachers on Fire as the best education podcast out there today. What an honor and what a privilege. I am so grateful to receive that tribute. You can find out more about Twinkle Resources at Twinkle, that's TWINKL Resources, on Twitter, and they are also on Instagram. They call themselves the home for engaging and inspiring teacher-created resources for 0 to 18 plus. So check out Twinkle Resources. And I noticed when I came across them that many of the educators in my own PLN are already following them. So thank you again, Twinkle Resources. Very fun recognition. And I shared that on Twitter and Instagram as well. Next, Brian Carpenter at Brian Carr tweeted, hashtag fresh air at 5, out early, going fishing, 5 degrees Celsius, awaiting the light, enjoying coffee. Heard at I Am Dr. Will tell his story and faith on at Teachers on Fire, episode 104. Thanks for sharing your joy for learning and teaching. Hashtag Thanksgiving Day here in Canada. I'm so thankful. Hashtag Balance LAP. Well, thank you very much for that, Brian. That's kind of a nice picture to think about, you out of your house, going for a walk and actually fishing at 5 in the morning on, as he said, the Canadian Thanksgiving holiday. Well, next, I'd like to say hello to followers of Teachers on Fire on Instagram, where Christine Ho Younghusband at Christine Ho Younghusband wrote, "Too cool. Thank you at Teachers on Fire. Hashtag UNBCED, hashtag EDUC431. And of course, Christine was commenting on a picture I posted on Instagram of my video conference over a platform called Blue Jeans with Christine's education class up there in Prince George at the University of Northern British Columbia. What a fun conversation we were able to have, and I really appreciated their thoughtful questions about, this whole business of education podcasting, why bother podcasting, and I was able to share my story, my journey to get to this point, and what led me here. So what a great connection. Thank you again, Christine, for giving me this opportunity, and really appreciate your comment and your following on Instagram. Next, my old friend from Delta, Jonathan Kung at Cool Putty Tat, commented, quote, "Top-notch, well-deserved, you worked hard for this," and he was referring to that honor I received from, again, Twinkle Resources as the best education podcast. And my friend Simon Murdy at The Smurdy Teacher commented, "Yeah, buddy, also not surprised. Your podcast was on fire the moment it started. You've connected so many educators together in such a small period of time." And shout out as well to Simon, who is just a phenomenal educator in his own right. He's the creator and designer of something called Smurdy Live, which is just a phenomenal program and unit for middle schoolers to take their live speaking into a TED-style speech. And you won't believe what he has constructed, like physically constructed in his classrooms and a couple of different school settings. So make sure you are following at The Smurdy Teacher there on Instagram. Also, the creator of some absolutely hilarious Instagram stories. I mean, I don't want to put too much pressure on the guy, but you will not find a funnier educator. So make sure to give him a follow. Again, that's at the Smurti, SMURTI teacher. Thanks so much for the encouragement. Mike, Jacob, Twinkle, Brian, Christine, Jonathan, and Simon, you were the fuel to my fire this week on Twitter and Instagram. And if you have commented, liked, replied, retweeted, or otherwise engaged with my content on these platforms, I so appreciate it. Thank you for not allowing me to just speak out into the void. Thank you for engaging and supporting the work that I'm doing. I also want you to check out the Teachers on Fire magazine on Medium. This week we featured articles by Caitlin Giordano at Mrs_Giordano. She posted 2 articles, actually 2 pieces. One called Teaching Text Evidence with Movie Trailers, very fun piece. And the other called Unconventional Teaching Practice, Grading Conferences. And in the latter, she explains how she actually sits down with each of her learners and they discuss what the appropriate mark or grade should be based on the student's self-evaluation. And those are good conversations, sometimes easy, sometimes hard, but always valuable. And so make sure you check out those 2 posts from Caitlin. She had a great writing week, so congrats. And then also another piece by Tammy Breitweiser at TLBREIT on Twitter, where she wrote Voice and Writing, Writing with Power, Possibility, and Voice. Another great piece from Tammy about how to bring that about in your classroom, how to amplify voice and to empower students, as she gives a couple of practical examples of how we can do that. And if you actually follow Tammy on Medium and check out her profile, Tammy is just writing prolifically on there as she's basically putting out an article a day, not all of them education related, but just a really fascinating person to follow on Medium. So if by now you're wondering what is going on, what is Medium as a platform, well, let me tell you a little bit about it and how to find it. The Teachers on Fire magazine is a Medium publication. You'll find it on medium.com or on the Medium app. If you're already an education blogger, you can join our growing writing team there. Continue to publish content on your own blog and keep full credit and ownership of your content on Medium. Message Teachers on Fire on any social media platform for more details. And I want to give a shout out to George Kouros. He hasn't submitted any pieces for the Teachers on Fire magazine yet, but he does write and post on Medium as well. So just another incentive to join that platform and check it out. Well, Teachers on Fire, this has been fun. I want to leave you with this quote from my reading. This one comes from a book called Leaders of Their Own Learning, Transforming Schools Through Student-Engaged Assessment. Just an awesome, awesome book that I read cover to cover in my master's program. And it's by Ron Berger, Leah Rugen, Libby Woodfin, and EL Education. The quote goes this way: giving students the skills to understand data about their progress and set goals that will help them improve is a critical component of a student-engaged assessment system. I'll read that one more time. Giving students the skills to understand data about their progress and set goals that will help them improve is a critical component of a student-engaged assessment system. Again, I'm your host, Tim Cavey, and I'm so grateful that you decided to spend some of your day listening to this podcast. I hope that in some way the content you heard from Tiffany Ott ignited your thinking and inspired your practice. And I'll meet you next week right here on the Teachers on Fire podcast. Take care and have a great week.